join me in the gospel reading, John chapter 20, verses 11 to 18. And it reads, "But Mary stood weeping outside the tomb. As she wept, she bent over to look into the tomb. And she saw two angels in white, sitting where the body of Jesus had been lying, one at the head and the other at the feet. They said to her, 'Woman, why are you weeping?' She said to them, 'They have taken away my Lord, and I do not know where they have laid him.' When she had said this, she turned around and saw Jesus standing there. But she did not know that it was Jesus. Jesus said to her, 'Woman, why are you weeping? Whom are you looking for?' Supposing him to be the gardener, she said to him, 'Sir, if you have carried him away, tell me where you have laid him, and I will take him away.' Jesus said to her, 'Mary.' She turned and said to him in Hebrew, 'Rabboni,' which means teacher. Jesus said to her, 'Do not hold on to me, because I have not yet ascended to the Father. But go to my brothers and say to them, I am ascending to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God.' Mary Magdalene went and announced to the disciples, 'I have seen the Lord.' And she told them that he had said these things to her. This is the word of our Lord. Thanks be to God."
In my third week as a minister ever, I found myself hours away from home with the church van on the side of the road, smoke pouring from the engine. I was fresh out of college and barely older than some of the youth that I was leading, but here we were on a Sunday afternoon on the way to church camp on the beach in Florida when the van started overheating. We were still in Kentucky. We had no choice but to take the first exit and pull into the dusty parking lot of the lonely Dairy Queen. As we anxiously climbed out of the van, the sun was blazing down on us. Sweat began dripping down our faces as we tried to figure out what we were going to do. But nobody knew. And the shops were closed. And nobody, yes, nobody, had a smartphone yet. We had hoped this would be a quick maintenance stop, but we soon realized the van wasn't going anywhere. We were at a dead end. How are we going to get to summer camp now? For Mary Magdalene, there was much more at stake than a week-long trip, gone up in smoke on the side of the road. Tears drenched her cheeks, pouring down onto her clothes and into the dirt at her feet. On the first day of knowing Jesus in the new normal, she stood facing the tomb with its stone door rolled back and Jesus' body nowhere to be found. She had wailed on Friday when they had crucified him, when he, along with everything that had seemed to make sense, had been put to death. She had sobbed most of the day Saturday, too. Today, Sunday, it had seemed as if maybe she could finally catch her breath, but just for a little bit, just for a moment. Before the sun even hinted at daylight, she had pulled back the covers and gotten out of bed after yet another sleepless night. Making her way along the path to the tomb, the darkness was in a way welcoming. What light could there be in the world now anyway? She knew the way to the tomb, walking steadily, gliding glassy-eyed toward the place where they had laid his body. For a moment she just stood, not processing, not even seeing. And then her eyes grew wide. Despair gripped her body anew as she realized the stone had been rolled away. All that was left of him is surely gone. She didn't need to look inside. She just knew. It happens all the time, graves robbed for any number of profitable reasons. So she ran, the fear fueling her legs as she races back for help. And now she stands in front of the tomb, suspicions confirmed by her friends. He is gone. 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 What now? With not even a trace of him left to cling to, what is there now but finality? A dead end with no way out. Because remember, Mary doesn't know yet what we know. She doesn't know what will happen. So in this moment, she is drowning in grief. The tears that found their way to her steadily all weekend can no longer be held back even a little bit. She weeps, letting the sorrow wash her away. She weeps for all that has been lost, for all that Jesus did not get to teach her, to show her, for all the life she had yet to draw from him. It was simply not enough. Surely God has a bigger plan than this. There has to be more. Leaning into God's presence, she finally turns to look at the tomb for herself. Bending over and straining through the tears, she focuses on where his body should be. Instead, she sees two angels in white sitting there with the audacity to ask her why she's crying. I mean, angels schmangels, who cares? Jesus is dead. Jesus is gone. Standing back up and turning around, she now sees the gardener, and he too asks her why she's crying. Goodness, what is it with these guys? Then he tacks on, "Whom are you looking for?" as if she's lost her mom in the mall. The nerve. But she needs answers, so she asks him if he can show her the way. For if not, the grief threatens to crush her. Our world today is overwhelmed. While the tombs that have contained us are slowly rolling back their stone doors, people continue to be overcome with anxiety. I mean, people have died. People are hurt, isolated, dehumanized. People are still crying out, begging even to know where Jesus is in the midst of their suffering. Even as we turn toward a new normal, as we bury what was, the grief does not disappear. What's going to happen in this strange new world? This coming weekend, many people are asking just the same question: what is going to happen? And also when, where, how. On Saturday, Thunder over Louisville will take place for the first time since 2019. Many Louisvillians are overjoyed and excited to again witness the powerful display of colorful fireworks bursting overhead. But if you've ever been downtown to watch in person, you know that COVID restrictions would make traditional crowds a bit concerning. Containing people in tiny reserved plots for the day is a different story than trying to keep people from sharing germs in porta potties and in long lines for deep-fried Oreos. So this year they're going to try something different. Instead of a big display on the river, there will be 5 locations kept secret until the last minute to prevent the masses from flocking to a day on the lawn with their folding chairs and coolers. Now, I realize that decisions to keep people safe these days are far from easy. But coupled with the joy of this event returning is the anxiety of people who might be negatively affected and have little opportunity to prepare. People who, even while glad that we are able to take these steps forward, might not do so well with the uncertainty of how it's all going to happen. The pet owner doesn't know whether to get out the Thunder shirt. The dad tries to figure out what bedtime will look like for his children. The woman who works 3rd shift worries that streets might be closed on her commute. And the veteran who has experienced literal war fears that the the explosions may come too close and trigger his PTSD. He doesn't know whether to stay home or spend the night at a friend's. They worry and watch the news, hoping for a clue. Whether you want to run toward the fireworks or away from them, we all want to know how it's going to work out for us. Will we be okay? Jesus, where are you in all of this? What's the plan here, God? Sometimes the fireworks sound like true thunder and explosions overhead. Sometimes the good news is too hard to see through the tears, even when it's right in front of us. Sometimes the empty tomb is not yet a sign of resurrection, but looks like the theft of all that you had left. What's going to happen to us now? What happens to the widow who lost her spouse of a lifetime? What happens to the man who was laid off from a job that gave him a deep sense of purpose? What happens to the family who can no longer afford to keep their home? What happens to the teenager who is suddenly confronted with a life-altering illness? What happens when life falls apart and we are left standing, weeping, crying out, Jesus, where are you? What happens now? What happens to Mary is that Christ reveals new life. Jesus is able to clear away the tears enough for her to be able to see what's been there all along. It isn't the gardener she's been speaking to, of course, but her Rabboni, her beloved teacher in the flesh. Not a ghost, not a dream, not a metaphor. He's really there. No longer wrapped in the shrouds of burial and death, no longer lying in a tomb, he stands before her. Jesus reveals new life to her with only one word: Mary. He speaks her name, and this is the one thing she needed to hear most. Where are you, Jesus? Mary, I'm here with you. Mary. What will happen, Jesus? Mary, I'm here with you, Mary. In an instant, upon hearing her name, Mary turns toward him, flinging herself upon divine love itself, made known to her in this fragile moment. Somehow, some way, Jesus is here. Jesus is with her. Jesus is speaking life into her aching soul. Take a moment now to see the joy radiating on Mary's face for yourself. Look at the front of your worship guide. You'll find a painting there of this very moment. Do you see God at work in her? Her eyes had been blinded by sorrow, and now they are closed in delight, for God has made things new. You can still see the echo of what was in the shape of her mouth, but now she radiates happiness. God has done that. God has unbinded her from the pain and made her free. Do you see how free she is? Arms thrown out in front of her. Free because Jesus has revealed new life to her. Death has been overcome and Christ stands. And Mary clings to this unexpected grace. She probably would never have wanted to let go. She was soaked in that moment for as long as she could, stayed here, packed her bags, and moved here. Held on to Jesus in just this spot, happy and blissful for as long as she could. But then Jesus interrupts again. He tells her that she can't hold on to him. There's more for him to do. God is at work not just to get to this moment, but for what is to come afterward too. He tells her that he is ascending to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God. Jesus looks into Mary's eyes. The tears are still everywhere. Her eyes are red and her face is still drenched. But her mouth is beaming, stretched wide across her face. Christ then empowers her to go to tell the disciples. He blesses her, ordains her to preach the bad news transformed by the grace of God into good news. God sends her back to proclaim the answer to her own questions. Where is God? Where is Jesus? I have seen the Lord. What will happen now? Jesus reveals new life to me, even where there seemed to be only death. For it is also said of Jesus, in him was life, and the life was the light of all people. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not overcome it. I have seen darkness, Mary could say. But through the pain, through the tears, God has shown me light. God has revealed new life, a new way, a new normal to me. Christ also reveals new life to us. We ask, is it still true for us? How you revealed yourself to Mary in a new way? How can things be new? They can only be new for so long before then they become old. So is the good news still good? Is it still new for us? It is. God transforms even bad news into good news. God huddles with us in our fears when we are trembling in the farthest corners of our home. God is still present even when we are weeping, desperately searching for Jesus. God stands in front of us, empowering us to bear witness to new life. There was a couple who for years watched for life, watched for a positive pregnancy test, watched the doctor's reaction as she came into the room time and time again. And they thought, new life is not possible for us. But then comes an unexpected grace. There were no labor pains, but papers were signed. There was no hospital bill, but fundraising was plentiful. And one day a little boy walks into their lives, a little boy who doesn't look at all what they once imagined their child would look like. The tears of past hopes still weigh on them, if they are honest. But what God births before all three of them is new life. God transforms sorrow into hope, into a new normal formed out of the dust. God is transforming your sorrow too. God says to you, "Oh, my beloved, why are you weeping? What are you looking for? I'm right here standing in front of you, speaking your name. I know you want to hold on to me. I love you, but the old ways have to be let go. I have to ascend to something even greater. Look, I'm about to do something new. Here it comes. Do you see it yet? I am making a way for you in the wilderness. I am forming rivers for you in the desert." Christ reveals new life to you, to me, to us. Not because of us, not because of anything we did or did not do, but because that is who God is. Life. And all there is for us to do is watch. Watch as Jesus continues to rise up out of death and bring us with him into it. This week, I ask you to do two simple things. First, watch. Look for an example, maybe even just a metaphor, of new life springing up. It may be as simple as a flower that grows between the cracks of the sidewalk, an apology following an argument, or the feeling of a full belly after a good meal. And second, share this grace. Take a picture of that flower and text it to somebody. Tell the person you shared an argument with how thankful you are for this vulnerability. Compliment the cook, even if it's yourself. While nothing can compare to the grace of our risen Lord, even small things can help us to see that God is constantly bringing forth a new life. Watch for it. Proclaim it. It's still true. The resurrection. It was true 2,000 years ago, and it's true right now in this moment. And it's still new, too. Jesus is revealing himself to us in a new way, making himself known again. It's a new normal. Oh, how I dislike that phrase these days. But God is moving us into something new. An extraordinary, surprising new life that we could never imagine for ourselves. I never would have imagined the way we did get to camp that year. It took the whole day to get back on the road. We sat quarantined in a corner of that Dairy Queen for hours, waiting for most of the chaperones to come back with the rental cars and pick us up. But eventually we got there. We drove all night through the darkness. If you've ever been to the beach, you know that moment when you can finally see the ocean through the condos. When you reach that last road that runs parallel to the waves. As we made our final turn onto this street, I could see just a hint of light beginning to rise over the waters. We found the conference center and shuffled our way indoors, quickly assigning rooms and bunk beds, collapsing onto our mattresses and pillows with a collective sigh of relief. And I remember the last thing I saw before my eyes shut early that morning. The sun, shining its light on all of us weary travelers. A new day had begun. Christ revealed new life to us again. Thanks be to God. Amen.